and welcome back to Adobe Lightroom 5 crash course. Today we are going to edit a few photos and basically go through the basic technique that I use and the basic formula that I use when editing my photos. And so in the past couple lessons we've learned what all these tools do and how we can use them. And now I'm just going to go through, quickly edit a few photos and talk you through them. Walk through it and basically tell you what I'm doing, because I feel like the best way to learn is just to follow people and see how they do it and learn by example. So let's go ahead through a few photos. Here's a photo I took at the Taipei airport in Taiwan. And so let's get straight to it. The first thing I would do is try to correct the white balance, because I was shooting through a greenish tinted glass in the airport. So I'm going to take this spotter right here, and I'm going to find what was white. And actually the side of this plane was white. So watch this. When I click that, wow, that is completely different look right there, and now it is perfectly white balanced. Then I'm going to crop it to how I want it to look. So I'm going to focus in more on the tail of this section. You know, this is a little bit artsy, but I like the tail, and you know, maybe more of the sky with some negative space, something like this, but still got to get that Hello Kitty sign in there. So something like this. Maybe rotate it so the horizon is level. So something like that will look good. This one is fairly properly exposed, so I'm not going to do anything with that, but I will boost up contrast like 10 or so, 10 to 15. I'll add a little bit more contrast by increasing the highlights. I'll decrease the shadows, increase the whites, and decrease the blacks. Clarity, I'll boost up to 10. Vibrance, I will boost up to something like 35 or 40, but then I might drop down the saturation a little bit, and that's just the technique that I use. With this tonal curve, I'll try to get a nice S figure to it, so bring up the highlights, drop down the darks, not too much. And then that looks pretty good. HSL, I'm not going to touch for this one. Detail sharpening, it's pretty much in focus, so I can zoom in on this and see, make sure that's in focus, and yep, it says in focus as I need it to be. So I'm going to go down to effects and add a little bit of a vignette. Whoops, let's get back to that photo. Okay, so post-crop vignetting, I'll drop down a little bit so we have this nice vignette around our image. I'll increase the feathering, play with the roundness and the midpoint, maybe make it a little bit bigger. Maybe not so much of a vignette, something like that. And there we have a kind of cool artistic image of this plane and at this airport. So you can see how it looks before and after. I just usually do reset and then Control Z to undo. And so from here to here is a huge difference. Alright, let's take another picture from the same day, same moment. Got these two kids against the glass, super cool portraits of them, and I want to, you know, really focus in on their expressions checking out this plane. So first, again, I'm going to white balance. I'm going to select the whites of this plane. That looks pretty good. Sometimes, you know, you gotta wait for your eyes to adjust or look away and look back at your computer to make sure that the white balance looks right. Because if you're just staring at pictures all day long, sometimes, you know, different color temperatures become more normal. Then I'm going to crop it. So I'm going to crop it closer to these kids so that they're really the focus, and they create this nice border around this image. So maybe even bring it up a little bit so there's not as much ledge below them. Then I'm just going to really crank up the contrast for this image. The exposure is nice. As you can see, if I want, I can properly expose the kids. And you can see like the colors and all the detail of their clothes. And the reason I can bring up the exposure all this way and still have the good detail is because I shot in RAW. And that's in a setting on your camera, depending on what type of camera you have. The RAW setting is the best because it allows you to take the fullest quality and highest quality pictures that your camera allows. And it just captures a lot more information than just shooting in JPEG or, you know, the lower quality images. And it's great because when you're editing, you have so much detail in this darkness that it's really, really amazing. And I'll show you another example of that really quickly right now. So here we got this dark image of this volcano in the Philippines, but really quickly, if I bring up the exposure, check out all this information in the grass right here. Before, without that, this is completely silhouetted and black. But because I shot in RAW, I can bring up this exposure and still have all the information in this grass. Of course, I don't want to do that because then I lose what's back here with the volcano. But you know, I could use a graduated filter or the adjustment brush, which we'll talk about later, to affect just this area. So let's get back to our image of the kids. Alright, so I like it being silhouetted. I like them being more silhouetted and then the background being exposed. So I'll just leave it something like that. Highlights, this stuff I'll just leave for now. I'll just affect that with the tone curve. But clarity, I'll boost up a couple. Vibrance, I'll really boost up like 40. Saturation, you can see what it looks like when I boost the saturation. You know, maybe something like that looks nice when it's more saturated. You get more colors in the background. Tone curve, again, I'm going to create this nice S curve to add contrast. This also adds saturation to it. So actually that makes the saturation look a little too much. So I'm going to drop down the saturation back to 10, around where it was. HSL, again, I'm not going to do anything with this for now. Sharpening, it's perfectly sharp. And vignetting, I'm not going to create a vignette with this one. So this is pretty much how I want my image to look. So let me reset it from there to there. Great image. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at another example of a photo. So here's a photo taken of myself and my girlfriend at her grandmother's 80th party. First thing first is I'm going to crop this one so that we're in the center and we're really using up most of the frame. Then I'm going to white balance. So instead of using this eyedrop, the selector, basically, I'm going to manually do it. So I know it's a little bit too warm, too yellow, so I'm going to increase the blues. I'm just using my keyboard up and down keys. So I'm waiting until this looks white. And so that looks pretty white, but now it looks a little bit too, I guess, magenta, or it still looks blue. So I'm going to decrease this, back it off, make it a little green. And so that looks better, the white balance, than how it was before. I can reset it. So see how it was super yellow? And now it looks better. The problem is that we were shooting indoors with tungsten light, so warm light, but then there's also this blue light coming from the outside. And so the mixture of color temperatures really is hard to deal with. But for now, I think that's the best we can do. Okay, exposure I'm going to increase because overall the exposure is pretty dark. We weren't using flash, we were shooting indoors, and it's kind of tough to do that. Contrast, I'll boost a little bit. Okay, highlights, I'll boost. Shadows, I will definitely boost because that will bring out the detail in Isabel's hair and in the shadows of my face. Whites may decrease a little bit. If there's any detail in these really highlights up here, then those will come through, and then blacks will just decrease a little bit to get more contrast. Clarity, I'm going to leave. Vibrance, I can boost a little bit, but if I really boost vibrance, I'll look a little bit more orange and you get some weird colors coming out. So just a little bit. Saturation, I won't do anything. S-curve, again, I'll add a nice contrasted S to it, maybe a little bit less, but you can see that the color temperature makes it a little bit awkward. My skin tone is kind of yellow, but then you get some purple and blue lights coming from this window. So what I'm going to actually do is decrease the saturation. That's one thing that you can do to basically save a photo when the white balance is hard to get, to make it more black and white, and that kind of fixes it. And it can be just a style that you would like. Another option is if I want to reset the saturation to 0, but you can use this HSL option. So say we want to do saturation, so click on saturation, click on the selector tool, then go to whatever color you want to decrease saturation. I want to decrease the skin tone a little bit, the yellow, so I'm going to click on her skin tone and decrease a little bit. I don't want it to go too far because then we look like zombies, but just a little bit so that our skin looks a little bit more natural. Then I'll go click on this purple spot on my face and decrease a little bit as well. So that's kind of doing the same thing that the saturation, decreasing the saturation did, but it didn't affect the entire photo, it just affected those colors. So something like that looks pretty nice. Sharpening, this image is sharp, but it does have a lot of grain. So let me zoom in on my face. Because we were using a high ISO, it added a lot of grain to this image. So let's see what some noise reduction can do. So increase the noise reduction, wait for it to load. Something like that, see, can help out, make it a little bit less grainy. Is it on and off? It's really hard to tell probably in the video, but it's definitely getting rid of some of this grain. And so when you zoom out, it looks a little bit nicer. So let me turn it off again. And it takes a while to load, but with it on, you just have to practice with it. And let me see, I was doing the wrong on and off, that's why. Okay, so detail, on, off, or on, sorry, off, on. Alright, so there you can see how the noise reduction has really helped. Okay, vignetting, I like doing vignetting on these group shots, so I'm going to add a vignette so that it really focuses in on us. And just something like that looks good. Maybe increase the feathering a little bit, but otherwise that looks great. One thing I do though is I'll go back through all these options to make sure that everything looks good. And so this photo just looks a little bit dark now, so I'm just going to increase the exposure just a little bit, something like that. I don't want to be overexposed, but I just want the details of our face to come through. So let's reset this to see what it looks like originally and edited. So I think that looks a lot better, and it's a great photo now. So that is my basic workflow. You got to go through all of these options at the top, to get your exposure right, add more contrast, add saturation. Depending on the photo, you might need to sharpen it or do some noise reduction if it's really grainy. And of course, if you want, you can add a vignette, which I did to most of my photos. I will continue these lessons with some advanced techniques in the next section, but I will show you how to export these photos next so that you can have these, save these as JPEGs or whatever you want, post them online, print them out, put them in a photo album or whatever you want to do. So that's coming up next. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye.